next week. Cards will then have a mandatory 3-day mini camp that'll run from June 11th through the 13th. And our next guest will be all over it at H. Balzer 721, part of the Cards Wire at USA Today. That's, of course, Howard Balzer. How you doing there, Howard? What's going on, my friend?
Doing well, guys. Doing well. How are you all doing?
You get pretty excited about these OTAs? I mean, it gives you a lot to talk about, right? How much time do you even get to, actually watch OTAs?
Well, actually, for the OTAs that we are there for, we are allowed to be there for the entire time of practice. But there's only one per week normally that we're allowed. That's the league guidelines, and no teams are going to go beyond that.
Yeah.
You have to be able to be present for one of every 3 OTAs. So they had one open one last week, one open one this week, which was on Tuesday. And like you mentioned, they have 4 OTAs next week. So one of them we know will be open. Who knows? Maybe they'll give us a little bone and open an extra one. For the mini camp, the whole thing is all 3 days are open in their entirety for us to be able to watch.
In your 50 years plus, who would you say, what organization is the most open when it comes to allowing media to cover them?
Well, I'll say this. I think right now, most are very consistent in the way they do things. And I think it's pretty much throughout the league. When I was in St. Louis and covering the Rams, they were incredible. I mean, even during the regular season, we were able to watch all of practice through about 4 or 5 different coaches in the time that I was there in St. Louis. They were, from what I understand, more open than anyone. Little by little, when Steve Spagnuolo came in as the coach around 2009, I think that was, he said, no, I'm not doing that. And so it was closed down pretty much. But everyone, I think, guys today are pretty consistent. During the season, the league says you have to be open for the first 20 minutes or so until the team drills start. And that's what pretty much everybody does. And none that I know of go beyond that once the regular season hits.
So when you think back, Howard, the years back, because I think my years in Buffalo, those late 70s, early 80s, I mean, the press was always out there. It was like no big deal. They were there, and They might go wait for us after practice, but they were always seem to be out there. What caused the change? When did this, I don't know, neurotic behaviors from coaches or whatever start to go, oh, my gosh, that reporter might call so-and-so in Washington. We take on the Redskins. Can you recollect when that started to kind of curtail off?
I think it probably was there in the early 2000s and got more and more after 2010. And I think as everything's ramped up and there's more media that are out there in a lot of places with the rise of the internet, when there weren't that many guys out there, except maybe in the bigger markets, it was a bit more open. But then as you saw more and more media covering and with internet reporters, TV, radio, all that, I think it got to the point where coaches just didn't want that many people being there. And because what ends up happening is you get people who are unaware of certain rules and things that you don't report when you're watching practice. I'll tell you guys a funny one of the great stories ever. When I was covering the Rams, and it was the first game of the regular season, and they were having their Wednesday press conference, and it was the first game. There were some reporters there from Philadelphia. The Rams were playing the Eagles, and they were in town to be there and cover. And one of the kind of new radio reporters asked Mike Martz, the head coach, and he said, I saw they had a rookie running back at the time named Trung Candidate.
Yeah.
And he said, I saw Trung Candidate out there in the backfield with Marshall Faulk during some of your offensive plays. Might we see that on Sunday?
Wow.
And March paused and said, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? And they were open practice at that time.
Sure.
They threatened to close it down because this guy just didn't understand the protocol of watching practice and what you could and couldn't say. And so I think that has been a big part of it, is that you never know what someone might do and they don't want to take a chance. And so they figure that, hey, we don't want to take any chance of someone seeing something and reporting it that we don't want out there.
So for the Joe Q public who can't get enough of your reports or just football in general, do you get the necessary time, Howard, to report and to get the stories to help the team along as far as the PR? Or do the PR guys understand you still need your allotted time or availability to contact these people, these players?
I think it's kind of a mixed bag at times. We can request things. The Cardinals, up until now, up until regular season, you're not in the locker room. They decide what players to make available to speak with us after practice. Now we can put in requests, and most of the time they will go along with them. And so you get enough. Sometimes the open locker rooms are open is not a word to describe them, because a lot of players avoid it and they just don't go into the locker room, or they're there for a very short time. But if you're really working on something, you'll be able to get, for the most part, what you truly need. But sometimes you have to ask. Like, for example, quite frankly, we made a request that we want to talk at some point before minicamp is over to Jeff Rogers, the special teams coach, just to get his take. We see it out there with him working on the new kickoff return rule and all that, and just to get his take on how he thinks that's going to be. You would think in some respects the team would think and say, hey, you know what? These guys might want to talk to Jeff Rogers. So sometimes you just got to request it. But for the most part, when we do request it, that they fulfill what we need.
What will be one of your requests, during the OTAs and minicamp as far as some of the players, and what kind of angles are you looking to take with whomever? And can you give us a little bit of a hint? Hopefully you have that you get a chance to talk to those particular players or coaches.
Yeah, with the coaches, you have to make a request, except for Jonathan Gannon, who's available every day. I think, and as I mentioned with Jeff Rogers, I'm hoping that we get Kyler before the end of minicamp. He hasn't spoken yet, and I mean, this has been quite a big difference in the off season for him, as compared to last year. And actually, really, guys, when you think of the years past, I mean, he wasn't a guy that was there a lot during the off season. But I truly think that what the injury did last year, it kept him around, and he began to see how important it was for him to be here, even though last year he couldn't get on the field. And so now he's on the field and doing everything that everybody else is doing. And I'm hoping we get a chance to talk with him at one of those, it's not next week, at one of the mini camp practices, just to get his take on how things are going in the second year with the new coaching and the new offensive system.
A couple more minutes with Howard Balzer here on Rock and Minuch with Jimmy B. Howard, are we going to start seeing a run? We've already started with these wide receivers just getting just crazy money, and teams like Miami that $150 million in guaranteed cash going to two players, wide receivers. Is it in San Francisco what they're doing at Jennings yesterday? I mean, what's going on?
It's skyrocketing. There's no doubt about it. But I think I think it's smart for the teams to get ahead of it, because if you have a guy you want to keep around, you want to make sure to, but try to get it done as soon as possible. Because if you wait a year, it's going to go up even more. And I've seen, there's reports now that Tyreek Hill, who just got a new deal with the Dolphins, when he was traded there by Kansas City, that he wants a new deal. And we've seen others, other deals, torn up with still 3 years to go on it. And so it's just going up, and up. And it's kind of, Marvin Harrison Jr. signed his contract last week. And by the way, he signed that without an NFLPA certified agent. So he'll save some money on that 3% of that deal. But now you get a guy like him, and assuming he plays at the level that you hope, you don't really have to deal with a new contract for him for 3 years. And that's a big plus, especially if he plays at a high level. But like you said, C.D. Lamb and Justin Jefferson with the Cowboys and Vikings respectively, they're watching this very closely, because the Cowboys haven't gotten a deal done with Lamb. We hear back and forth with the Vikings and Jefferson, and you just wonder what's going to happen there, because like I said, the prices keep going up.
Howard, what are you working on? What can we check out as we either follow you on social media or what you're writing for USA Today?
Yeah, I'll be following up on these mini camps and doing some things on Kyler, doing James Conner and his role on this team. How the defense looks. I mean, they got a lot of new bodies out there on defense, and they're all you can't really judge too much mini camp, but there is. I'll say this: you never want to overstate things, but there is a positive vibe around this team right now, and going into the second year with Gannon and all the coaches. And by the way, the stability on this coaching staff, there were no changes. No one left. They didn't have any new coaches that come in, which is very unusual in the NFL. So when you have that's a good thing. So, like I said, I think it's a pretty good vibe, and we'll definitely be following up on that.
Weekend.
Same to you guys. Take care.
It's Howard Balzer joining us, Cardinals beat writer, Cardinals Wire at USA Today. Follow him on Twitter, X, HBalzer721. He brings up a good point about no change at coaches. I don't know if necessarily that's good, because that means that the team didn't have success. So, a coach didn't get hired somewhere else.
Well, I think from the offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, that's important.
Yeah.
You want that same voice. Now, assistant coaches are going to come and go, but it is very rare to hear that nobody has moved on one way or the other. But maybe, he's got a young staff, Rock. He's got a couple guys, young guys that are up and comers that they want to stay consistency. I'm sure they're paying them well. And, then there may not be the opportunities guys are looking for if they're going to move up. So if you're going to move up, it can't be for lateral position per se. So I think that's good, because you hear the same voice, the same consistent voice. But for your coordinators to have the same offensive coordinator back 2 years, 3 years, 4 years in a row speaks volumes for that offensive side and defensive side.
Tell you what's on tap tonight as D-backs Mets getting first pitch going here in about